Right, welcome to this key area which is all about respiration. When we're talking about respiration, we're really talking about the process of breaking down energy that's in food. Now, in order for us to carry out any tasks or simple functions, we need energy, and that energy comes from the chemical energy that's contained within food. And that's mainly in the form of glucose we're talking about. There are other foodstuffs that have got energy in them as well. There's fats and proteins, but really when we're talking about respiration, we're usually talking about glucose being broken down to release energy. When we talk about energy in foods, we use this term here, kilojoules. That's how much energy is in a food. And whenever you look at foodstuffs, if you look at the side of boxes or on the side of packets and things like that, you'll see something that will tell you the amount of energy that is in different foods. Fats have about double the amount of energy that's found in carbohydrates and in proteins. But when we're talking about respiration here in this video, we're really talking about glucose being broken down. So if we move on and have a wee look at respiration, what it is, well, it's the process of releasing chemical energy from food, that is from glucose. It occurs in every single living cell and it's controlled by enzymes. The enzymes control the chemical reactions that take place. Now you'll see here on this diagram that I've got here, in actual fact this is the kind of basis of the word equation for respiration, and that is that glucose plus oxygen gets broken down, and it gets broken down to carbon dioxide, to water, and most importantly to energy. The whole reason for this process is to produce the energy. It's not to produce the carbon dioxide and water, but the key to it is this energy production. And that energy can be in the form of food, or it can be stored in in the form of heat, or it can be stored in a special chemical called ATP. So we're going to go on and have a look at some terminology, and that is looking at this term here, aerobic respiration. Now, aerobic respiration is respiration that takes place in the presence of oxygen, and it's basically just what we've talked about there in the slide that was there before. The word equation for that is that glucose plus oxygen is broken down to carbon dioxide, to water, and to energy. And that's your aerobic respiration in the presence of oxygen. Now there's another type of respiration which takes place in the absence of oxygen, and it is called fermentation. So fermentation basically means a type of respiration that occurs in the absence of oxygen. And an example when this might happen is if animal cells are in a poor oxygen environment like stagnant water or in mud, or you actually experience fermentation when you are exercising and the muscle cells that are there, say maybe in your legs if you're running a marathon or something, or you're playing a game of football, then the muscle cells there, they'll start to break down glucose in the presence of oxygen. But as you exercise more and more, the oxygen levels start to become low. And so what happens is the muscle cells that are there start to break down the glucose in the absence of oxygen. And when they do that, they are not producing carbon dioxide and water and energy. They produce something called lactic acid. And you know all about lactic acid when you're exercising because it causes that kind of ache or that kind of burning feeling in your muscle cells, and you stop exercising eventually because it becomes so painful. And as your body starts to recover, what can happen is the lactic acid can be converted back and it can be used in the presence of oxygen. It can then respire aerobically and you start to recover from the lack of oxygen that is there, and your muscle cells start to recover. So that's fermentation in animal cells, but there's also a fermentation pathway in plant cells and in yeast. And again, it's when there's no oxygen present, and an example of that would be when root cells of plants are in waterlogged soil, or when you've got yeast cells and they're there in a vat along with water and with sugar and so on, when we're trying to make things like wine or beer. And there's a situation where there's no oxygen that's present, or very little oxygen that's present. And this time round what happens is that the glucose is broken down to carbon dioxide, and it's broken down to ethanol, that is alcohol. Now this process that is here is the process or the basis of things like your beer and wine making or your bread making. So the carbon dioxide helps the bread dough rise, the alcohol is burnt off in the oven, or it's the basis of your wine making, so you get your alcohol made and it's that you're interested in. If it's a sparkling wine, you keep the carbon dioxide in it, or whatever. So that's a fermentation pathway in yeast cells or in plant cells. And it is not reversible. Remember I said before the lactic acid can be converted back and then broken down when oxygen becomes available? Well, this pathway can't be reversed. Once the carbon dioxide and the ethanol are produced, it can't be converted back to be broken down if oxygen becomes present. Now there are various things that can affect respiration or affect the rate of respiration, and we'll have a look at these in a wee bit more detail in the next video, where we're going to look at some experiments looking at measuring the rate of respiration. But respiration, because I said it was controlled by enzymes, enzymes are dependent on having an optimum temperature. In our bodies, enzymes like to work at 37 degrees Celsius. So temperature is a factor that affects respiration. Also as well, the concentration of glucose, how much glucose is available, will also affect the rate of respiration, how quickly it's going. And also because we're talking here about enzymes, pH is something that will affect enzymes, so any changes in the pH will affect the rate of respiration. And as I said, we'll go on and have a look at that in the next video.